Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This video, I want to actually go into what the hell my story is. Like, how did I end up being a digital nomad? How did I get to where I am now? Tell you guys the wins and some of the absolute failures, and really give you a true insight into what the journey is like to become a digital nomad and what the journey is like being a digital nomad, because there are pros and cons to anything you do in life. And trust me, although the lifestyle looks absolutely glamorous all the time, there has been some really rough moments along the ride. So I'm excited to kind of really share a deeper insight into my story, have you guys get to know me a little bit more, and really understand my journey and how I've gotten to where I am now, which obviously if you're watching the previous videos, you know I'm in the process of applying to my digital nomad visa for Spain so I can live in Barcelona and set up some roots for a little bit, which I'm actually excited for because your girl's been living out of a bag for the past 3.5 years. And although it's been fantastic and I definitely will still be traveling from Barcelona, especially because travel within Europe is so easy, just chef's kiss. It's just like the most beautiful thing because it's easy, it's cheap, quick, and I'm really excited to see some more European countries that I haven't done yet. But let's rewind and go back to the beginning. But before we hit there, I just want to say, if you guys have been enjoying the channel and if you like me and my videos and you want to see more, make sure you hit the subscribe button. It means so much to me. Like the video, hit the subscribe button, join this community, leave a comment if you want. I really, really do love engaging with you guys. Give me a follow on Instagram or give me a DM if you want to chat. I love just talking to my community, and anyone who's in this journey or in this kind of work or field or anything, just connecting with you guys makes me so happy. So like I said, don't forget to subscribe. But let's start back from the beginning. So I went to school, I went to Northeastern University in Boston, and I graduated with a biology degree. Now, I always wanted to go to med school. I actually always wanted to be a surgeon. I was really into science as a kid. I really enjoyed anatomy and physiology, and I found all of it so fascinating. I still do to this day. But I do think there was a bit of a pressure on me in terms of like proving a point of me having a respectable job. I started college in 2011. It wasn't like it is now where people didn't have to go to school or you can get a job in social media or do whatever. It was more kind of textbook on what your career options were. And so being a doctor was super respectable. Anytime I told anyone that I wanted to be a surgeon, the immediate response I got was, ooh, like, that's a good job. Like, look at you go. And you got that immediate, like, oh, I feel good about myself. Like, I know I'm going after something really great. And I always wanted to be really successful and have this amazing, just great life in general. And so I went after it. And by the time I got to my senior year, I knew I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to commit to more school time for 4 more years, doing internships, doing residency, doing specialty training, all of that, and still be in school for another like 10 years. And I have always loved to travel. And it definitely got worse once my senior year hit. I went and actually studied abroad in Barcelona, and I spent my first semester of senior year there. And that was my first time like traveling on my own. So I wasn't with my family. I wasn't on a family vacay, you know, doing the thing. I was kind of on my own to really just immerse myself in where I was living and enjoy it. And I truly fell in love with living there. And then after I graduated college, I had the opportunity to actually go move to Tokyo and Singapore for a couple of months. And I jumped at the opportunity and I went and lived there, and then I was traveling Southeast Asia. And when I did that was when I really realized, like, I don't want to be in a position where I'm stuck with roots, like where my life is my practice is in New Jersey or whatever state it was going to be in, and that is what I have. And I can't really go anywhere. Like, I didn't want that. That felt suffocating to me. So I wanted to change up and switch fields, but I still wanted to work within my biology degree. I spent a lot of money, like so much money on student loans to go to school, because originally I was going for med school, so who cared how much the private university costs and how it was almost $60,000 a year, but we won't talk about that right now. But I had these loans and I was like, I'm gonna be a surgeon, like I will pay it off, it's fine. Well, your girl's not a surgeon, obviously, so I was like, what am I gonna do? While I was interning in the OR during one of my summertime in college, I actually met some med reps because I was working in the operating room, and the medical device sales reps were kind of showing me like what they did, and they were selling the implants or products that the doctors were using on the patients, and they were still in the surgeries all day long, and it's quite a lucrative business. So I was like, I want to get into that. And so after a lot of applying, a lot of freaking hard work, I got into medical device sales. And I was like, you know what? This is it. Like, I'm sales. I don't have an office. I go from hospital to hospital. I'm friends with all the doctors. I'm making really good money in my early mid-20s. And I was like, this is my ticket to success. This is exactly what I want. It's like that financial success. It's all that feelings. And I thought maybe over time, this desire to go live abroad would leave me. Well, I'll give you a little sneak peek. It did not. It never left me. And so I was with the company for a couple of years, and I got to a point where one time one of my managers was like, if you keep going at the rate you're going, you're doing really well. Like, you can be your boss. Like, look at your boss now. Like, you could have his life, a lot more flexibility, all those kind of things. And I looked at him and I thought, like, holy shit, I don't want his life. Like, I actually don't. And so that realization hit me, and I did what no one really should do. But you know, if you're a type person like me, I need to go balls to the wall or I won't do it. Like, that is just my personality. I quit my job with no plan. So I gave my work about a 6-week notice, because with my job, it's not like you can just have someone fill in. I gave them notice and I booked a one-way ticket to Hong Kong. So I quit my job in August of 2019. And my original plan, before I even quit, I was gonna go move to Australia. I really wanted to do a working holiday visa. I really wanted to see if I can get an actual like job working in Australia and then stay there for years. So I applied for my working holiday visa in Australia. I got that approved. My goal was always to renew it for the 2 years. And before I did that, I was like, you know what? I've been working and burning my butt off, like at both freaking ends. I was burnt out from my job. It was really intensive with sales. Anyone who knows is in it, you get it. And I wanted some time off. So it's like, I'm gonna go travel. I'm gonna travel Southeast Asia a bit for a couple months before I go to Australia. So I like finished up work. I packed up all my stuff. Like, when I tell you I cleaned out my room, I sold more than half my clothes. I sold everything I owned, my car, all of it. I put what I wanted to keep in boxes in storage in my parents' basement, and the rest was going with me. And I literally had one like 40-liter, no, maybe it was 55-liter backpack, like for my back, and I had my little front pack with like my laptop and stuff in it, and that was my life. And so what originally was 3 months ended up being 6 months, traveling and really just breaking the mold of who I thought I had to be, or who I thought I can only get up to. Like, I think I had a very set limit in my head of what I could accomplish and what I could do. And I think when I started traveling solo, like I went on this whole trip by myself. When I started traveling solo and I did those 6 months abroad, I really put myself to the test. Like, I had to figure out life on my own. I was always very independent, but this really pushed me to a different level. And I started to discover like who I wanted to be. I wasn't anymore like this corporate Christina who had to, you know, have the car, have the house, have the finances, like show off to the world, have the bags, the nice things, have my job title. Like, I was actually just me. Like, stripping all those things away, I was just myself. And so it was really just like determining and finding out who was that person without all the rest of those things. Like, who was I? And through, like I said, stripping all of that back, I kind of came to the realization of who I wanted to be and like what my lifestyle I wanted to have. I want to be able to choose how I want to live. I want to be able to choose how I want to work. And as I was meeting people, I was also meeting people who left the corporate grind and were like, fuck that, can't do it. I'm not meant to be miserable 9 to 5, 5 days a week and then live for a weekend, getting blackout drunk like I was all weekend long, and then Sunday rolling around and being like, I hate my life, oh my God, Monday morning, and then Monday morning waking up, the alarm going off, and you laying in bed being like, Jesus, take the wheel, like, just take me to hell. Like, that's how I felt every week, and so I didn't want to do that anymore. And so when I was on this trip, I really started to discover like I was super independent. I wanted more for myself, and I was determined to figure it out because I was never happier than in those moments. I was never happier than the freedom of just being able to enjoy the world. Also leaving the constraints and the confines of the American society of how much we need, and how much we need to show off and keep up with the Joneses and all these things. And you go to these different countries and these cultures where people have less and they're 30 times happier. Like, probably not even 30, they're a billion times happier. They don't have the anxiety and the stress and the worry of what they can show off and do. Like, they're just living life with what they have and they're happy with it. And with that said, that doesn't mean I didn't want financial success, but I realized that happiness isn't tied to that. Happiness is tied to who you are and what you can make of what's around you. And so it really shifted a lot. It shifted a lot in my brain. It shifted a lot of my perspectives of what I wanted and what I valued and what was important to me to get to happiness. And so I realized that success and finance, like financial success, is an add-on to my own happiness. But when I'm fulfilled with what I was doing, that's when I was really, truly happy. Even when shit was hitting the fan. And let me tell you, when I was traveling, shit hit the fan. Like, I was deported from Myanmar. I burst both my eardrums on a plane flying into Cambodia. I was pretty much deaf when I arrived. I got strep throat and like bronchitis or whatever within a week or two of each other. I was deathly ill. I had $250 stolen from my backpack. I had someone steal my phone, but there was just a lot of shit that went wrong. And no matter what happened, like, I learned to just be resilient. I was like, I'm still living this life. So like, yeah, that sucks. And yeah, I'm pissed. And yeah, I'm annoyed or upset. But like, look where I am. Look what I'm still doing. This is still my life. So a lot of that was instilled in me and I wanted to keep it going. So let's fast forward a little bit. I did my 6 months travel. I was actually ending my Southeast Asia and Asia trip in India. And after India, I was going to be flying to Australia to start my working holiday. And I was actually really excited because 6 months of nonstop going, like, I was moving every 3 to 4 days, maybe a week if I liked somewhere long enough. But I was ready to like kind of just have a routine and have a bit more normalcy, because hostel life can definitely wipe you out. So I was really excited. And then that was in the wonderful, crazy time of March 2020. So as you can pretty much guess, because you've heard these stories so many times before, 2 days before I was supposed to be flying to Australia, the borders for Australia closed. And I was like, oh shit. And then India started getting a bit sketch, not gonna lie. And so they were telling us we really should go home. Like, a lot of us we don't know what's going on with the world. Like, my mom was calling me being like, please come home. Like, I do not want you getting stuck in a foreign country. Like, please, for the love of God, come home. So I ended up flying home what I thought was going to be like 2 weeks, maybe a month. And I was like, you know what? It's fine. I'll settle in like for my month and I'll just relax and then I'll get ready to go to Australia. Obviously, we all know that didn't happen. So as time kept ticking away, I was home for a couple months. I literally used this time as the time to push myself forward. I was not letting go of this dream. And I started updating my resume. I started sending it off to remote jobs. I started trying to figure out what I can learn online. And I was like, you know what? If I'm stuck home, I'm using this time to my advantage. I've never had more time in the world than right now when there's nothing to do. And so I just used it to my advantage. And the first thing I did was I took a virtual assistant course. I was like, you know what? I have a degree in biology. I worked in the operating room. I did sales. And I spoke to doctors and nurses all day, and I know how to do surgery because that's what I had to learn. Like, I had to learn how to actually do the procedures so I knew what the doctors were doing with my equipment and I could help them if they needed. What about that transfers over to online? Like, at that time, there still wasn't like really social media management like it is now. There wasn't TikTok like it is now. There wasn't a lot of things happening like it is in the current world. So I was like, what the hell do I do? So virtual assistant course popped up. I think I saw an ad for it or something. And I was like, you know what? Like, there's no harm in learning a little bit about email marketing, a little bit about Pinterest, a little bit about social media, a little bit about email management, all those kind of things. And I took a course and I started learning skills. And one of the things that kind of really stood out to me, and one thing I liked, was social media. I loved posting when I was traveling. I didn't have a big following by any means. It was a small account. I posted randomly when I had a cool picture, but I wasn't really into it. But I did enjoy like social media in general. And so my first step was actually just talking to people in my net, like friends, family, people that I used to travel with, people, whatever, telling them what I wanted to do and what I was trying to like build towards. And so while I was doing that, I actually was speaking to one of my friends and they're like, oh, we're actually letting go of our social media manager. They had a travel-based company and we need somebody new and we need somebody with a fun personality who can really liven up everything that's going on. We think you'd be great. Would you be interested in coming on board? They're like, we'll help you learn anything else you don't really know so far, but we think you'll pick up on it fast. And I am lucky. I'm definitely a very quick learner with things. Give it to me, show me a few times, and I pretty much will get it under my own belt. And so I started doing that for her and started doing social media. And then from there, it kind of like gained another client and another client. And then I was doing social media for a couple brands. And I was getting ready to then move to Bali because Bali actually opened secretly. People really didn't know. They had like a business visa that you could really easily apply for. And they started opening it in October of 2020. So I was like, my ass is getting back to the sun and my ass is getting out of America because I just really like, I was in this high of living my best life around the world and then right back to where I started. And I was like, oh my God, losing my mind. So I really wanted to get back out on the road. So I started doing all of this and I started posting about what I was doing and business and all of these things. And I started getting a lot of people who were messaging me, especially from my travels previously in Southeast Asia and then seeing what I was doing when I was home, being like, how are you doing this? Like, how did you start? How are you getting clients and all that kind of stuff? And I decided to take on a coaching role and I wanted to help people kind of just get their foot in the door with their own business, get the kind of motivation and the power, the mindset to be able to be like, fuck yes, I can do anything I put my mind to. Like, I absolutely can do this. So I took on coaching clients when I first got to Bali and I did that for pretty much like a little over a year. And I was basically still had my social media clients and I was working on the coaching business and I was doing course creation and all of those things. And so that's kind of how my business evolved while I was living in Bali, and I lived there for a little over a year and some change. And while I was there, I was like, you know what? One dream I always had was starting a podcast. And I always wanted to do it. Like, I am a chatty Cathy. I love conversations with people. I love interviews. I love all of it. And I always thought I'd be good at it. And Bali has like podcasting studios. They're amazing and they're really inexpensive to record at. And I was like, fuck it, I'm doing it. I met enough people in Bali who are digital nomads who I wanted to bring on the podcast to share their stories or insights, kind of just have fun conversations for people to listen to, because when I first started my journey of digital nomad, like, there was no one I felt like were actually giving the real honest conversations. Like, what is it really like? Like, yeah, traveling is wonderful and great, but what happens when you are homesick? What happens when you do, lose clients or do whatever, or want to start over a new business, or you feel lonely and isolated, like whatever it might be. I wanted to start that. And I truly loved that to pieces. And while I was doing it, I realized like nothing lit me up at the time more than doing that podcast. I would come out of these interviews. I did like 2 interviews every week on Wednesdays. I would come out of those interviews and I seemed like I was high. Like, I felt I was high on energy, on life. I felt invigorated. Like, I'd come home bouncing, smiling, happy. My friends were always like, oh my God, like you are made for this. Like, you are loving it so, so much. And so when I was recording all that stuff and I was like, all right, the launch date, like it's coming. I wanted to record all the episodes first and then be able to just drip them out over time. And I recorded all my episodes and then I was like, okay, like now what do I do? And so I realized there's a lot I had to learn about podcasts. And while I was learning a lot about podcasts and I was doing my courses and my one-to-one coaching with clients, I realized like the love I had for podcasting and the love I had for doing all of those things was astronomical compared to coaching. I just felt like coaching wasn't lighting me up. And then I felt really, really lost because I got to Bali, like I had my social media clients, but I started taking on less of them and just I like 2 remaining clients that I just like stuck with who I enjoyed working with. And then I had my coaching clients. And the thing about coaching is you obviously don't have people just on a monthly retainer all the time. It's usually a program, 3 months, 1 month, 6 months, whatever. And so you'd have like these highs and lows of getting people into your programs for 3 months and then having to relaunch. And then maybe you get people, maybe you don't. My first launch flopped. I got absolutely freaking no one. And I felt really down. And then I started getting people. But the high of getting people signed on a program was amazing. But then when I was in the programs and doing it with them, that high faded. Like it wasn't there for me. I didn't feel connected and aligned the way I was hoping I would feel fulfilled in other things I was doing, like I did in coaching. But at that point, that was my main income. It was my main income source. And so I got to the point where I launched my first season of the podcast, and I used a lot of my extra time. Not that I had loads. I was working like literally 12+ hour days in Bali, trying to do client work, course creation, and learning all the podcast stuff. I learned how to edit my own podcast. I learned how to write show notes, SEO stuff, all the different components of podcast management. I taught myself watching shit ton of YouTube videos. Guys, can I tell you, like, YouTube videos will change your life. Like, go on and watch some of these things. You can learn so freaking much. I'm not kidding. But I started watching YouTube videos. I taught myself so much, and I was really loving that. But I wanted to take a bigger step in the podcasting direction, and I decided to take on less coaching clients because it really wasn't lighting me up. And I was like, why am I gonna do another job that doesn't light me up? Like, I left my corporate job for that reason exactly. And then the universe just hit me with, a nice little in the face. I had taken on my last coaching client. I think I was finishing up with them, or maybe in the middle of their like 3-month period. And because COVID and because things were happening, like stuff changed with my social media clients, and they no longer had the budgets to have anyone really handle their social media. So I went from having like stable monthly income that I knew was coming in to no more really stable income. I had my one coaching client, and that was pretty much it. And I fell into like a pit of despair in Bali. I didn't know what to do. I was like, I left, and I felt like I was on top of the world when I got there, and that I found people in community who were like me and understood me. And I had this dream of building this big career, but somehow it just wasn't aligning. Like things just it wasn't going together. And so it took a lot of time and like some dark moments for me to figure out like what I really wanted to do next. And I started to realize like I love podcast stuff so much. Why couldn't I do it for somebody else? So I really put myself out there. Like I obviously never managed anyone else's podcast, but I put together my resume, put together some portfolios, and started just applying to freelancing jobs, reaching out to people. And I got my first podcast management client, and then I got a few more, and then I got a few more, and it kind of snowballed into a whole brand new business that I started from scratch, completely like almost on accident, just by following a dream of starting my own podcast. It came into this, and that's still what I'm doing to this day. And it really like gave me much more happiness in what I was doing. And while I was doing all of that and creating more content for my clients and not doing the social media management side of it, but really just repurposing content and creating it for them, I started to do it more for myself as well and just have fun with social media again. Because I feel like when I was doing the coaching, I felt very pressured to follow suit of like what other coaches' Instagrams looked like, and I fucking hated them all, and I didn't want to look like any of them. I couldn't stand even following half of them because I hated these informational carousels all the time and just being like businessy. I wanted to just share my life and what I was doing and my work and have it be a fun place for people to follow along with, and not just like business central, because that's not just who I am. That's not my identity. Like I'm Christina, I'm my own brand, and I want this all to come together. So when I started doing the podcast stuff, I really just fell back into who I was. And so now I obviously have my podcast management business, and I do a lot of content creation for myself. And then it kind of trickled down. I was like, you know what? I did the audio podcast. I still have it, obviously. And I'm doing all of this content for TikTok and for Instagram. What's my next step? Well, you might guess it, because you're looking at me right now. My next step was YouTube, and that was always a massive dream of mine, but I honestly never thought I would ever do it, because I was like, who in their God's mind will ever watch this? Like, who's gonna watch me speak or wanna listen to me talk, like telling tips or stories or anything about that? Like, I just wasn't confident enough in myself. Not that I was fully confident when I first started, because, you know, it takes time. It definitely takes time to like come into yourself. But I was like, now or never. We moved to Barcelona for 6 weeks to try it out. And I was like, I'm gonna do it now. Like, I just need to get this under my belt, you know, especially when I left Bali. Like, we left Bali back in March of 2022, and we went traveling for the rest of the year pretty much, and just in different places, trying out different locations, and we really came down to loving Barcelona. So I decided, you know what, screw it. Like, I'm in Barcelona now. I really want to talk about so many things. I'm gonna start my YouTube channel, and that is kind of where this all came down to. And yet again, like, I'm obviously learning as I'm going, as anyone does with like any expert, any successful person out there started probably knowing jack shit. And they learn along the way, and like, you create your own reality. Stop, like, people are always saying like, oh, be more realistic. Like, why? Because it's your version of reality. Like, why do I have to be realistic to live? Like, I want to live a big badass life. So I went after the YouTube channel, and I'm creating over time, and I'm learning more, and I watch so many YouTube videos on how to do this. I've filmed 1,000 times and not used them because I'm like, oh, cringe. Like, I'm so cringing at myself. But you got to get over yourself, and you got to kind of move forward, because I know, like, these are the things that I really want to pursue. Like, I really want to build my podcast, and I really want to build this YouTube channel, and I want to have fun doing what makes me happy and makes me money. So that is kind of like the evolution of where it is now. Like I said, obviously I'm still running my podcast management business, having clients, helping them do that and do content repurposing and all of that stuff. And then doing my projects like my podcast and this YouTube channel, and hoping to grow them enough to where they can be a massive part of my business. So the moral of this whole story, and I know it's been a long one, so thank you for sticking through, but the moral of the story is, like, I originally wanted to build this big badass like life, and I wanted to be like some of the people were like proud of. And I am doing that now. It's just a completely different version of it. So you need to remember, like, whatever your version, like yours specifically, not hers, his, them, theirs, whatever your version of happiness and success is, follow that. Like, we don't need to be in this box of what we think success looks like. I used to think it was being a doctor or a lawyer or a CEO or something along that line, but that's not what it technically has to be. Like, I can be successful doing whatever I want, especially now with social media and the way the world's changing and going. Like, you can create whatever life and path you want to have. So I think it's just really important to go after that. And who knows where the hell I'll be in 5 years from now. Hopefully a year from now, I'll look back on this video and be like, oh my God, I went from having 200 subscribers on YouTube to now thousands, and it is a massive part of my business and life, and that is the goal, guys. But I think you just need to create the version of life that you want to live, and one that you'd be proud of looking back on. Like, if you were to step outside of your life right now and look at you and look at everything you've accomplished, like, are you happy with it? And does it light you up? And would you be proud, you know, looking back and saying that was your life? Like, did you live a kick-ass one? And it doesn't have to be a digital nomad across the world doing crazy things. It could be within your hometown. Just find things that fulfill you and go after it and make yourself freaking happy, because you deserve it, and so does everyone else. So that is my story all in all. So if you guys have enjoyed this video, and if you're enjoying the rest of the videos on the channel, don't forget to subscribe. And I can't wait to bring you guys more videos on this channel about digital nomad life and just my life in general, living abroad and bringing you traveling. I have some cool travels coming up, so trust me, you won't want to miss them. So hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys next time.